Welcome to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. The Vancouver Writers Fest connects people to exceptional books, ideas, and dialogue through year-round programming that ignites a passion for words and the world around us. We carry out our work on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This month on the podcast, we're thrilled to share the final event from our 2025 season of Books and Ideas. The Books and Ideas event series runs from January to June, featuring acclaimed new releases in a modern space for exchanging ideas on Granville Island. Robert Macfarlane joined us with his latest nonfiction book, Is a River Alive? A radical reimagining of rivers and life itself. He speaks here with Laura Lynch, host of CBC's What on Earth? This event was recorded live on June 18, 2025, and presented in partnership with Pacific Salmon Foundation, a nonprofit at the forefront of salmon leadership in BC, and you'll hear a little from them about their important work as well. Looking for more recommended reads? Make sure to check out our festival reading list, which is filled with over 120 books from authors who will be joining us at this year's festival from October 20 to 26. The Vancouver Writers Fest would like to thank our public sector funders without whom we couldn't do our work: the Government of Canada, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Government of BC, the BC Arts Council, the City of Vancouver, and CMHC Granville Island.
Hello. I love this room on a summer evening when we can open up these curtains. It's so different from when we're here at festival time in October. It's really nice to see all of your beautiful faces. My name is Leslie Hurtig, and I'm the Artistic Director of the Vancouver Writers Fest. Welcome to Books and Ideas, an evening with Robert Macfarlane. Now, to appreciate the work of Robert Macfarlane is to immerse yourself in what it is to be fully present and fully grounded in this world of unfolding beauty and precarious existence. This was a hot ticket here tonight in town, and I don't have to tell those present that we have with us a writer of great empathy, a storyteller capable of bringing each of us along to witness what he has seen and what he's learned from the living and connected rivers of this world. We are fortunate this evening to be partnering with the Pacific Salmon Foundation. Please join me now in thanking them for their support and welcoming Development Officer Kristen Meyer to the stage.
Thanks, Leslie. The Pacific Salmon Foundation is proud to sponsor the Vancouver Writers Fest, not only because I have personally been a super fan of the festival for many years, but because of their amazing efforts to create space for important conversations like tonight's. We are grateful to be part of this event with Robert Macfarlane, who has been so prolific in shining a light on aspects of the natural world that are often overlooked. In this case, rivers, which are the lifeblood for salmon and all of us. Salmon start and end their lives in fresh water. They need cold, clean water to survive as young fry, and at their maturity, when they return to their natal streams to spawn the next generation of fish. But compounding factors like human development, pollutants, and climate change, just to name a few, are putting salmon survival at risk. Over 70% of populations are now below their long-term average in watersheds across BC and the Yukon. But together with First Nations, local community groups, and Crown Government, Pacific Salmon Foundation is working towards a comprehensive plan for salmon recovery. We are taking proactive measures to repair habitat and help salmon adapt and overcome changing conditions. It's going to take all of us to help salmon recover, so we hope that you will join us in putting our voices together to secure together a thriving future for wild Pacific salmon. Please do come chat with us after the event for your chance to win a salmon prize pack. Thanks again to the Writers Fest for having us out, and enjoy the show.
Our moderator tonight is the award-winning journalist Laura Lynch. She is the, yes, yeah. She is the host of What on Earth, a CBC radio series and podcast covering climate change and climate solution. She's just let us know backstage that they have just celebrated their 5th anniversary of that show. Laura has been a great friend to the Vancouver Writers Fest, interviewing guests such as Wade Davis, John Valiant, Arno Kopecky, and J.B. McKinnon, among many others. So we're very pleased to have you here tonight. Robert Macfarlane is an internationally awarded writer and scholar, celebrated for his lyrical prose and deep engagement with nature, landscape, and storytelling. His previous books have been translated into more than 30 languages, and they've been adapted for film, music, theater, and dance. Tonight, he joins us with Is a River Alive, a book that dives into the intricate and dynamic life of rivers with his trademark poetic storytelling and deep research. He invites readers to see rivers not merely as bodies of water, but as living entities that pulse with energy, history, and meaning. Please welcome Robert Macfarlane and Laura Lynch.
I think that since you and I just met, that it's maybe best to start this by asking each other a kind of a traditional question, and maybe you can tell me where the question comes from. But the question is, where are your waters?
Well, the version of that question I prefer is, who are your waters?
Who are your, there we go.
I didn't realize I'd be correcting Laura Lynch as my first intervention this evening.
Okay,
so
I'm leaving.
Forgive me. We can come on to talk about pronouns and whoing rivers, but who are my waters? So this is a version of a Maori greeting, that koe koe, and that is who are your waters, would be one translation of that. I've taken to asking people, who are your rivers? And I have yet to come up dry on on an answer. And very often, river will draw story, will draw memory, will draw relation behind it. So I'm going to ask you, Laura.
Well, I know. Well, who
are your?
Well, I want to ask you. You answer first. Who are your rivers?
Tennis is
Who
underway.
are your rivers?
Well, I'm going to name two, and I think everyone has many. One is a tiny chalk stream. I live in Cambridge, in the south of England, and the chalk stream ecology is a globally rare one. So there are probably between 200 and 300 chalk streams or rivers in the world, and 80% of those are in England. It's 99 million year old chalk. They form a beautiful sort of Great Barrier Reef, as it were. It's sometimes in terms of rarity and fragility. The ecology is unique to the chalk. They also run through our most densely populated and heavily abstracted regions, and the current trajectories of abstraction, which I think you possibly call extraction, but abstraction is the term of art within water company discourse for the removal of water from the system. Current trajectories of abstraction and climate, long-term drought, we're in a 123-year unprecedented spring into summer drought at the moment. This network will be undergoing collapse by about 2050. So I live on a remarkable and vulnerable and wounded river system. So that's one of the rivers, and the other is another spring that rises on the summit of the Cairngorms, which is the closest thing we have to a tundra. And they're called the Wells of Dee, and they bubble up and then cascade off into Garve Corrie, which is one of the great corries, glacier-carved valleys of Scotland, and run away, gather their strength to become the River Dee that meets the North Sea at Aberdeen. Back at you. Who are your waters?
Mine are across the inlet over to the North Shore. I only thought about this after reading your book, and mine are really Mosquito Creek, which crawls up Grouse Mountain to the north, where the ski hill is, where I was skiing as a child, and I used to play in Mosquito Creek all the time. It was pretty much my backyard. And I didn't realize until today when I looked it up that it's considered in danger, at risk, And I certainly have watched the levels generally come down over the years. That's the river or the creek or the water that shaped me.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I also just want to start by asking you this question because, you know, it's the gateway to everything else. So it's right there.
Oh, that question.
That question. Your son didn't think twice when you asked him this, right?
No, he didn't. 9-year-old Will, I was walking back from school with him one day early in this project, and he did that thing where children briefly feign interest in what their parents do. What's the title of your new book, Dad? Is a river alive? ? Well, duh. That's going to be a short book then, because the answer is yes. And I did run that version of the book past my editor. Editors, it wasn't met with universal acclaim. So of course, this is a much more complicated question for someone like me, mostly people like us, to answer. And so it opened into this process of 4 to 4.5 years of following rivers, meeting river people, traveling to places where rivers are both under threat of death. If a river is alive, it can certainly die, and are also undergoing radical defense or reimagination in law, in story, in language. And just to set a brief bit of English context, we began telling a very new story about water in 1989. It was told very powerfully and very well, and it was embedded within the structures of power. And that story was privatization. So the entire river and water system of our country was privatized in 1989. A toothless system of watchdogs and regulators was set up, and private equity firms swooped in and began the process of piling on debt and shoveling out dividends. And around, the numbers are pretty hard to consolidate, but around £60 billion worth of debt was taken on, and around £70 billion worth of dividend was paid out. And you can tell just from those raw figures that what didn't happen was investment in physical infrastructure. And as that physical infrastructure dilapidated, so also what we might think of as a kind of emotional infrastructure dilapidated. And we have warped away from our rivers. And slowly, around about the time I began work on this book, coincidentally, though perhaps not when I look back, the visibility and audibility of the consequences of that disastrous young story about water as liquid asset, fully assetized, became apparent to the nation. And there has then been this concomitant surge of river guardianship, of reimagining the relationship. And I sometimes say that the crisis in our rivers is a crisis of imagination before and alongside a crisis of legislation. So it took me, in a way, going around the world to come back and realize that radical reimagining and radical threat were both absolutely present in England as well.
And we'll talk more later about what the threat represents in terms of, strangely, a way to actually help fix things. But in the book, you travel, as you say, to 3 different countries with 3 different rivers, with 3 different challenges facing them. And I wonder if you could talk about each of them. We could start in Ecuador, in this remote forest, exploring the Rio Los Cedros, which just seems magical to me.
It was. I'll just explain about the images briefly. So in the background, there's just a slowly circulating carousel that roughly corresponds to the crisis in England. Here you can see water that isn't even touchable, badged as such by a water company whose logo is "Water is Life." And then we'll cycle through Ecuador, India, and eventually Nitasanan, Quebec, and then those will be sort of roughly correlating, but we won't be speaking to them. I just before I answer that, I do just want to say something about being in Vancouver again. So I haven't been in your city since 1997, but the reason I'm here tonight has its roots in that time in Vancouver, when as a young mountaineer on a climbing trip in the Rockies, I walked down what I guess must have been, well, I don't know what street it was, McLeod's bookstore. Yeah. That street. And I remember so vividly that a man rollerbladed past me wearing nothing but some very tight blue Speedo swimming trunks and a python, a live python that was wrapped around his neck. He did have sunglasses, actually, I should say. And I was just like, I am not in Kansas anymore. And I turned into McLeod's bookstore, and on the front display was a book called Arctic Dreams.
Oh, Barry Lopez.
Didn't know Barry Lopez, didn't know Arctic Dreams. It had a glacier on the cover. It had an amazing subtitle, Imagination and Desire in a Northern Landscape. I picked it up. It was quite heavy, and that was significant because I was just about to go and walk the West Coast Trail on Vancouver Island. So I was weighing my food and I was weighing my books, but something about it landed. And I read that book for the first time on that West Coast Trail. And as I've said before in public, but I just wanted to name it, and Barry, who died on Christmas Day in 2020, having been a lodestar to me as to many people, that book just exploded my idea of what non-fiction, this weirdly negatively defined form, could be. And it is a river is a braiding, a river is a gathering, and that book was a braiding. It was polyphonic in tone and voice and form and vision and prose poetry and cultural history and anthropology and geography, all living together in this extraordinary terrain that he created. So this book, and me being here, becoming a writer, owes its origin to that guy on the rollerblades with the python around his neck. That's the moral of that story. So, yes, I went to Ecuador. No pythons, but no, I was drawn there, and there's a Canadian connection here because.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, no surprise, a Canadian mining company was involved in a story of environmental destruction and harm. And this was a prospect generator firm, a speculative mining company, a sort of small company that that does the initial prospecting and then acquires the social license and then sells that on to a bigger company. And they had their sights on a cloud forest, a place of ultra life called Los Cedros, the cedar forest, and through that run these beautiful clear-watered rivers and streams that are co-authored by forest and river. A cloud forest really, really is a river maker, and rivers are the co-authors of the cloud forest. And but that forest was to be deleted after probably 1.5 million years of self-regulation, right through the Pleistocene state glacials and interglacials. And that was because of the gold that those hills contain, which is now twice as valuable as it was when I was there. So although this is a happy story, it's not a story with a happy ending. The episode was remarkable. But then in 2021, this remarkable ruling was handed down from the Ecuadorian Constitutional Court, which was of such power that it compelled the eviction of the mining companies, the Canadian one and the state mining company and army, and it also compelled them to make good the small amount of damage that they'd been able to undertake in this forest. And that ruling had that force because it had the leverage of Articles 71 to 74 in the Ecuadorian Constitution, which was reimagined in 2008 to include the rights of nature.
Which was noticed around the world when it became part of the Constitution. Ecuador stood out among nations.
Yes. It was the first time it had happened. In fact, it remains, although there's a claim for Bolivia, it really remains the only constitution that includes rights of nature at that blueprint of the state level.
which makes it that much more shocking that there was even a consideration of allowing mining to go on.
Well, yes. I mean, that is a whole farrago. And Canada, as you know, one of your brilliances as a nation state is the laundering of your reputation globally and the soft power brilliance of the cultural capital that you make of yourselves and citizens are not nation. I recognize that as a nature-friendly nation. But the Canada-Ecuador axis, 75% of mining companies are headquartered in Canada, as you will know. And the Canada-Ecuador axis is a particularly damaging one. And as we were discussing earlier, anyone interested in that axis and what Canada is doing with, or Canadian companies, I should say, with terms of plausibly deniable violence, should read the reporting of Brandy Morin.
Yes.
Who is
tremendous,
absolutely
journalist.
Brilliant journalist, writing in Ricochet and other publications, and is absolutely focused. You've recently, or the state has recently signed a new deal, a trade deal and a mining deal with the Ecuadorian state in February. So this is a very, very live and consequential axis for humans and for life.
So when you were going into the forest, you weren't necessarily going in there with a mind to being part of an effort to save it, were you?
Well, so I traveled to the forest with two of the judges who handed down this ruling, Agustin Grijalva Jimenez and Ramiro Santa Maria, who had not been able to meet this forest during the court case because COVID had been on. So I had this remarkable experience of traveling to this cloud forest, which in a way shouldn't exist. So every step we took up into the mist was a step taken in the real and the counterfactual, the forest that is here and the forest that almost wasn't. And to watch the judges meet the forest was deeply moving. I was accompanied by a Colombian human rights and nature activist lawyer called Cesar Rodriguez Garavito, a field recordist called Cosmo Sheldrake, and then this remarkable mycologist, Juliana Furci. And we
Mycologists
also
are mushroom hunters, by the way.
Oh,
Just
sorry,
for those
yes.
who might not know. Yes.
A point of fact,
Fungus
in Canada,
hunters.
do you say fungi or fungi?
I don't know. You'd think I would know that.
Hands up for fungi.
Fungi, anyone?
Excellent. I'm with my people. That's
Fungi.
great. There was a whole American fungi thing I had to negotiate. Also, sorry, just tiny point of linguistic order. You know B-U-O-Y, the float.
Boy.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Just like buoy. I mean, what? I mean,
We are not
dear.
the 51st state.
Okay, excellent. The linguistic border was hold your lines on boy. And fungi. Okay, yeah.
And Z.
And Z.
I'm going to stop there.
Z,
Yes.
not Z.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right, I know how to get a Vancouver crowd riled up now. That much is clear. So we were searching for second collections of two fungi, which may have flashed up already, and that was all part of fortifying the post-ruling defense of the forest, both within conventional environmental protection laws, where new collections of new species can really be consequential, and then working closely with activists, many of whom are intergenerational activists in the Intag Valley, that region which has resisted incursion after incursion from mining companies.
And you take this remarkable hike, and very difficult. This is not hiking in the mountains around here. And you make it close to the exact springs of the beginning of the river.
The Rio Los Cedros, yeah.
And there's this joyous moment where you're having the water in your mouth and over your face, and you're celebrating with the judge, or the lawyer or the judge.
I know the Judge Agustin, yeah. That's Juliana, this frankly supernatural fungi finder, very serious, hardcore field mycologist. But she found these two tiny brown mushrooms, made second collections of them in 4,000 hectares of brown forest floor. It was, and she would say, I think they're close now. I can hear them. Yep, and then she went round like 3 turns in the path, and then she collapsed to the floor, and howler monkey has dropped a fruit on her head. No, the fungi. She lets out this huge woohoo, which is her greeting, and there it was, one each time, just one tiny specimen, and it was. I think it's something like the internalized expertise of somebody who has spent their life thinking about and with fungi. It was very amazing to witness.
So much happiness.
A great deal of happiness, a lot of fear. I mean, being an environmental defender in Ecuador is a very dangerous thing. And the day we arrived in the forest, a young female water defender had been shot dead in the north of the country while pregnant, and it was and there was very much a sense even then that what César called the Colombianization of Ecuador was beginning to happen, and that spiral, I'm afraid, has intensified. A sort of alliance of narco-trafficante enforcement, illegal mining, and then the plausibly deniable violence of large-scale mining. So it is a very, very hard habitat, as it were, politically, in which to defend water and defend land. So that's why partly why this ruling was so consequential.
And to state the obvious, the river is giving life to everything that is around it, including the fungi.
Including the fungi and the communities. And among the many amicus curiae, the many friends of the court who testified to the life of the forest and its rivers in order to have the rights of the forest and river recognized were the communities who just spoke very straightforwardly about clean water.
And you came back from that with wonderful memories and a lot of illness.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, came back from that with something like dengue fever. Juliana had a huge spider bite that necrotized. So, the life of the forest was busy inside our bodies as well as around us. But I remain very involved with the forests. I remain very involved with all the rivers with whom I have spent time and about whom I have written in this book. So because the troy ounce gold price has more than doubled since then, the mountain is worth twice as much as it was, because at times of volatility, capital flies to the security of gold. So the mining companies prowl, factions within the government seek to overturn the ruling and destabilize the rights of nature principles more fundamentally.
That raises a question to me about this whole need that is being spoken of for critical minerals now to actually help with climate change, but they come at a cost to places like this. How do you square that circle? Not that it's your job, but it must occur to you.
It's an unsquareable circle. I mean, gold and copper, so there's a lot of copper mining. I mean, gold is there really as bullion, although also tipping some of the circuits in the laptop that I wrote this book on, and facilitating the conversation that we're having now, and copper, huge, and then further south the lithium in Chile. So I broadly, anyway. That's a whole other conversation, which we can get into afterwards. But about a fossil fuel economy versus something like a transition economy. But
let's go to India then.
We're there.
Was my timing good?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. This is the life of water in the Chennai region. This is an avian Venice. This is 10,000 storks kissing one another, and I tell you, when you've got a 2-foot beak, kissing is tough. So they have this beautiful mating practice of clacking their bills at each other and then clacking their bills upon one another. And it's the most sort of loving, raucous sound that I can imagine. And when you hear it amplified 10,000 times and then have 40,000 other birds, so that is the life of water inland of Chennai before the 3 great rivers of that city meet the city, city that was founded on water, but now lives in this strange denial relationship with it.
Yeah, do not be misled by that happy scene of the birds having a good time, because things are not well in the rivers of Chennai.
no, they're not. There are zones in those rivers. So the Kosalastaya, the Adyar, and the Kuam, the three rivers that run through Chennai, and it is a wetland city. Water seeks a body. We are all water bodies here, and sometimes that body is marsh, and sometimes it's given the form of river or shaped into lagoon using a bunt, a berm, as is the case of that bird sanctuary. But those rivers where they do hold their form and run through Chennai, there are zones where 0% dissolved oxygen and 0 species count. Yeah, and that they get flushed out by the monsoon, and the city lives now in this drought. I call it ghosts and monsters, the ghostly presence of water for at least half of the year. This spectral sort of vanishing, and the poor parts of the city are served only by standpipes or by bottled water, which is trucked in millions of plastic bottles per day, which then go into the rivers. And then when the monsoon comes, it flushes the city systems through into the sea. And then when the cyclones come, which they do every few years, there are catastrophic and multiply fatal floodings in the city. So this region of very long-term hydrological literacy now lives in this doubly crucified state of drought.
Where
and
people
flood.
are so removed from understanding what the water in the river is for.
Well, certainly the state is. The state has lost all sight of that. And the people I was working with, spending a lot of time with there, these remarkable young guardians and activists. The book is filled with river people who are trying to imagine water differently, trying to imagine rivers otherwise. But in Chennai, they have such a hard situation ahead of them. But there they are working to imagine, quote, a just future for water and people and life in Chennai.
Well, maybe you could talk about the turtles.
Yeah. So the rivers all end at the sea, as of course, but there they flow straight into the great Chennai coastline. And the remarkable young naturalist activist Yuvan Aves, who I was spending time with there, the intertidal zone is absolutely central to the way he imagines and organizes life and death, and thinks with the intertidal zone. And so there is olive ridley sea turtles nest there each January, February. They also die there because trawlers breach the offshore limit, and so trawler strike and net entanglement kills these mother turtles as they follow this ancient instinct in to lay their eggs. But then there's this beautiful sort of reciprocal care and guardianship that is exercised by humans there, who are walking the tide line at night, because the nesting happens at night every night.
And you walked with them.
I walked with them, yeah. Yuvan's been involved with them for a long time. So you would dig out the nest once the mother turtle had laid and returned to the ocean, dig out the nest, count the eggs as they come out, and then measure the sand cavity so that you could, when you buried the eggs, which is what is done with each clutch in what's called a hatchery, so a safe area of the beach where they won't be dug up by feral dogs or collapsed by tractors. You have to dig exactly the dimensions of the cavity from which the eggs came, and then put all the clutches back in the right orders, and then mark them. And then 40 days later, the sand begins to simmer, and the first of the hatchlings comes up. And the morning we finished interring around 2,000 turtle eggs that night, there was a great cry from the hatchery, from Aaron, who I was there with, and he, with all the flair of a Parisian waiter lifting the cloche off some disgusting French meat dish, there was the first turtle hatchling, which I think you will have seen, and that was this remarkable. The dialectic of life and death played out on the water's edge, which I saw over and over again.
But that mere act of birth, which must have been moving to see.
Yes.
That's no guarantee of anything for these.
Oh, for the turtles?
Yeah.
No. I was told not. I started crying, and Aaron was like, no, don't be sentimental. That one will be gull food within 2 minutes. I was like, oh. No, it's a percentage game. And I should say that the percentage game is being heavily skewed by climate change. So the sexing of turtles has a kind of a toggle switch between the sexes. So when the sand in which the eggs are hatching reaches a certain temperature, probably around 32 degrees, then almost all of the hatchlings come out female. And the intensification of heat in the southern part of India particularly means that the majority of eggs are hatching female now, which of course then skews the breeding ratios and so forth.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but the point of you describing that evening is to show that there are people, you talked about this a bit already, who are mounting, I don't know, acts of resistance might not be the right word, but that they are working for a future. They see a future.
They are. They're dreaming. And what I came to understand, particularly watching Yuvan, but spending time with all of these groups who were dreamers in the best sense, was that, and I don't write it like this in the book, I only formulated afterwards, that despair is a luxury and hope is a discipline. And the first part of that is really speaking to myself, standing with Yuvan and his colleagues on the shore of Yenor Creek, a creek so envenomated by industry that it was literally scrubbed from the state map because it was inconveniently polluted and sited. So the Tamil Nadu state government in the late 90s just erased it from the map. So people would send them photographs up to their necks in the water going, there's a river here, it's not on the map. No dice. Anyway, it finally got put back. But watching them working with the fisherfolk communities, working with the ecologies of crustacean and mollusk and fish, they're just trying to imagine what a kind of multi-species justice would look like in a watery context. How can I possibly despair? And then hope is a discipline, because I've come to realize that you have to fantasize, which is to say, in the best sense of that verb, you have to dream of the world otherwise, but you then have to have the other foot of hope firmly planted on the firm ground that you can push forwards on and do the work, the discipline, the labor, the time, and the de-damming of the Klamath, which is not an uncomplicated story, is, I think, this rare beacon in our hope-stripped times of hope as discipline, the imagining of the Klamath without those 4 dams that have been there, the first of them since the 20s, and then the enormous work of alliance building and capital accrual and consensus building that eventually led the last of those dams to come down in late August, and then the Pacific salmon began their return.
It was remarkable.
Remarkable.
I know you want to give a couple of readings from the book, and there's one that you particularly wanted to tell people about, which involves a little bit of black comedy.
Black comedy. Well, it's really it's an homage to you, Canada. This Anglo-Scot had never met a black fly before. We get midges. Scottish Highlands, many midge victims out there. Yeah. Well, they do number, a million attack at a time, and it feels like a B movie, and they fill your nostrils and your ears. But they're rank amateurs compared to the black fly. So we descended this big river in the north, which we'll come on to. But I was with an American friend, Wayne, and a couple of people who really knew what black fly were. And this is what happened when the black fly descended on us for the first time. That evening, when the wind drops, the first wave of black flies hits us. I notice a small, shiny, bulbous-bodied fly crawling on my hand. It looks rather sweet, like a stubby winged ant. It's a miniature child's toy of an insect, and I peer at it. Is this the notorious black fly? I ask, unimpressed. It doesn't seem to be a biter. The bear, who is a Czech Quebecois man who has spent a lot of time with black flies, shifts uneasily and scratches the stubbly top of his head, making a sound like a boot scraper. Yeah, That's a black fly, and they do bite. He pauses respectfully. The thing about black flies, well, one of the things about black flies is you don't really notice them biting you until after the damage is done. There are quite a few black flies on and around us now, I note with interest. I look over at Wayne. Wayne's bleeding from his forehead. You're bleeding from your forehead, Wayne, I say. He must have clipped it on a branch while foraging for firewood, I think. Well, you're bleeding from your neck, Rob, says Wayne. Really quite a lot. I must have clipped it on a branch while foraging for firewood, I think, which is strange because I didn't feel it, and nor did I go foraging for firewood, now I think about it. That'll be the black flies, says the bear. Blood is now flowing eagerly from 10 or 12 small points on Wayne's forehead, and it looks like he's been raked by a miniature submachine gun that stitched a line of minute bullet holes from temple to temple. I raise a hand to my neck, and it comes away red. The surface of my neck now feels as if I'm running my hand over a small volcano chain on a relief map of a crustal plate zone. It's absolutely repulsive. Black flies in number have been known to kill mules, says Ilya. Nothing kills mules, says Wayne. An atom bomb couldn't kill a mule, I say. Mules are the shopping trolleys of the ungulate world. They're fundamentally indestructible. Black flies can definitely kill mules, says Ilya with certainty. I pat a lot more blood off my neck. I'm starting to think that black flies can probably kill shopping trolleys too. An hour or so later, Wayne walks over to me. My head's topography has been very substantially reshaped by these bites, says Wayne. I examine him and whistle. Wayne is right. Where Wayne's temples had been, there are now thickened domes of flesh, histamine taut and shiny, and all the wrinkles on his forehead have vanished. And his cheeks are beginning to bulge up and out, impinging on his sight. Let's look on the bright side, I say to Wayne. It's like a kind of free bug Botox. And anyway, at least what they've done to you is symmetrical. Yeah.
It is amazing. One of the amazing things about this book is that there are moments of sadness and darkness, and then there are moments that are thrilling beyond belief, and then moments of pure humor, which reflects what your journeys were on this book.
Yeah, I think we all know that admix of travel comes from travail, which comes from tripalium, meaning the three-pronged spear of torture. Speaking as someone who's been on the road for about 7 weeks, I'm fully feeling the tripalium of travel at the moment. But the black flies inflicted that too. But they're also a moral fly, I've come to conclude, now that I'm safely at a distance from them. Bill McKibben, the great environmentalist and activist, he was once asked what species he would take on the Ark, and all the other contributors were saying like jaguar and, anteater, and he was black fly. Why? Because they keep us humble and they remind us of our limits. And I thought, yeah.
So that is our introduction to the part of the book that you spend the most time on. Which is, and I don't want to say the name of the river because I'm not going to say it correctly.
Well,
I'll leave it to you.
Rita Mesticocho, who's one of the great writers of this continent, this landmass, who is an Innu poet and language keeper and community leader. She, I think, pronounces this river the Mutahekau Hipu. So in English, it's known as the magpie. The Innu Aiman version, and there are variant spellings, translates as something like the river who flows between square, blocky cliffs. And it really does.
Yes. And you chose to go there because?
Oh, yes, because this is another of these rights declarations. So again, in 2021, there was the Mutahekau Hipu became the first Canadian river, flows through Nitassinan, the unceded Innu homeland, which is, and I refer to Nitassinan throughout, became the first river to have its rights declared. And that took the form of a mirror declaration, mirror resolution that was issued by the Mingani Regional Council in the area and the Innu Council at Equaniche, the township near the mouth of the river. And what you see in the grammar and the language of that remarkable document, which if you read French, you can read the Innu Declaration. It's an extraordinary thing. But I'll just read 2 very quick paragraphs from it so you can hear what happens when an ontology that recognizes a river as alive and as continuous with the life of a community that has lived with and by and on the river for 8,000 years intermittently, meets the grammar of the resolution of the declaration. And we are familiar with that grammar. It's the grammar of whereas, be it resolved that. But there's where water comes together with other water, as Raymond Carver puts it. These are two grammars. So just two paragraphs from the Innu version of the resolution. Whereas, since time immemorial and long before the arrival of Europeans, the Innu people have occupied, managed, used, and frequented the Nitassinan, of which the Mutahekauhepu is a part, practicing a traditional way of life and surviving on the area's fauna and flora, be it resolved that the Innu Council of Equanish declares that as a legal person and a living entity, the Mutahekauhepu and its watershed have fundamental rights in accordance with the beliefs, customs, and practices of the Innu of Equanish. So there's quite a collision there, and it makes for an extraordinary document. It really does.
And you wanted to be there to see.
Well, I wanted to meet Rita.
And you wanted to meet the river.
And I wanted to meet the river. And first I, of course, went to Rita to ask her and the community's permission to descend the river. And she took one look at me and scanned me. And then, as I relate in the book, she said, "You look too much with your eyes," true. "You think too much with your head," definitely true. "You don't feel enough with your heart," possibly true. "And you are not taking your notebooks on the river." And that was the bit that really chilled me to the bone as a writer. So we did come to this negotiated settlement, whereby I could write, but I had to write on the bank.
I was wondering what you did because
Because I did write.
She is a force, though.
She's amazing.
I would do everything she told me to do.
She's absolutely amazing. And if you have any French or any Innu Aiman, I really encourage you to seek Rita's work out. And I recommended her work in a New Yorker interview recently, and there was a bit of back and forth because the New Yorker said, "Well, we haven't recommended a book that has no translation into English." And I said, "Well, that's a very good reason to recommend a book that hasn't yet been translated into English." So credit to them, they went back and said, yes, absolutely right. But I'm just beginning work on translating out with Rita out of French and into English. And I just, the poems are absolutely extraordinary. So Rita, she laughed at me. She said, "Yeah, of course you have my permission, but you need the river's permission." It's like, "Well, how do I get that, Rita?" That's but all of this was I later understood was a kind of Socratic method under a different name and coming from a very different tradition for opening me to other ways of thinking and being and feeling on this big river.
She gave you tasks.
She gave me very precise tasks. Some of them were logistical, so always pitch the tent facing east. So greet the sun each morning, which I did, even when it meant on a very small beach, pitching the tent so that there was a rock face about that far from the mouth of the tent. But I wasn't going to disobey Rita. I had to gather water for her from various places. And then she said, "You can ask, you'll be able to ask the river one question, and you'll get an answer to that. But it has to be the right question."
And this is a quest for you and Wayne.
Yeah,
he gets a question too.
He does get a question too, and he got a Rita read Wayne and me both just brilliantly, instantly, and but they were different questions. And I got very anxious about what that question should be.
That's more that thinking with your head thing.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. Thinking with my head. And Rita was a remarkable sort of metaphysician of the river for us. Very grateful for that encounter and that ongoing friendship. Yeah.
And so you take off far far north up to the beginning of this trip, and you had your friend Wayne with you, and
Yeah.
you had some other companions to
Yes.
help because
Yeah, it was a big river, much bigger than my high confidence, low competence, as mountaineers say. I was actually low confidence, low competence, which didn't put me in a stronger position. I have to say. Well, you can see. I mean, we didn't paddle that, just to be absolutely clear, but you can see the miracle of this river, and it is a force, and it generates force as part of the hydro electrification of really almost all flowing water in Quebec by Hydro-Quebec, but it is a force and a presence in other ways as well. And spending days on and in and by and buried by and beaten up by and eroded by and rivered by this immense force, it really changed us.
we didn't talk about that, why the river wants protection. And there is a very good reason.
Do you mean because Hydro-Quebec has...
Yeah.
Oh, right, yes. So this is one of the last free-flowing big rivers in Quebec. And the Romaine River to its east, which was even bigger and longer, was multi-dammed by Hydro-Quebec. And that has turned that river, the majority of that river, into a series of chained reservoirs. And because of the economy of large-scale hydro infrastructure, it would be cheaper to disassemble the labor camps and then just relocate them westwards onto the Mutekauhepu. And the transmission lines for moving power are already present, moving along the coast and intersecting with Mutekauhepu. So on the table, and still not yet removed from the table, is a multi-dam. It's not active, but it's not gone. Right. Is a multi-dam chain reservoir big hydro plan for the Mutekauhepu. So that's what provoked this alliance building and the declaration. And I should say that the declaration is performative in as it were the optimal sense of that word. I don't mean that it is trying to perform its own virtue. I mean that it is seeking to say something in order to make it so, that performative sense of speech act. But it has as yet no regulatory or legal claim within the Canadian legal system. No. So it's an utterance of another way of imagining that river, which seeks to remove it from the pure resource conversion extraction vision.
Well, you're right. There's no legislative political action around things like rights of nature. There are declarations of different rights of nature in this country as there are in other countries, but there hasn't been a government that is set about writing laws around that. And I wonder if you foresee, I mean, the rights of nature seems to be having a moment. It's being talked about more than I've ever seen it.
Yes, so there is the Ecuadorian constitution, the other gong strike moment of the 21st century. I should say that rights of nature is a new naming and framing of a very old, not even an idea, but a reality, which is that the world is more alive than power allows. And the other gong strike moment landmark is the 2017 Te Awa Tapua or Whanganui River Claim Settlement Act, which does have legislative force, which is a parliamentary act in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
I was thinking about Canada,
but you think
right,
about Canada, exactly. So there's been a first reading of a Rights of the St. Lawrence Bill, which hasn't had its second reading, as I understand it. So I think what I see the rights poetry, documentation, vision as is an attempt to begin to unsettle the profoundly anthropocentric and fundamentally resource-based, instrumentalist, extractive accounts of relationship with nature, which are just utterly deep-coded into our systems. And we see now the acceleration and, as it were, perfection of the assetization vision, the net worth value vision in the administration to our south. And I've been tracking very carefully, as many of you will have been, the consequences of the the executive orders and the memoranda for water and rivers in particular, obviously they ramify and harm in multiple directions. But one of the things I've noticed is that water and rivers are very hard to see in all of this. Up until a week ago, when a presidential memorandum rolled back the entire Biden era, 20 years really of work on the Columbia River Basin renewal, which was issued on the Thursday I arrived in Seattle to great consternation. So that's a disaster for salmon return there, a disaster for food sovereignty and food security among tribal nations there, and is also a calamity for the river systems. But prior to that, water and rivers had not. I spoke to a river activist who was like, it's like we're trying to fight a ghost in terms of the media. We can't get traction because it's not centered in any of these orders, but in many of them it's implicit. So the Clean Water Act is being circumvented in lots of ways. The reduction of the definition of harm within the Endangered Species Act, which is relocating and redefining harm away from habitat harm towards the intentional harm of a particular species, immediately has the effect of neutralizing the ability to argue for river habitat, for example, under the terms of the ESA. And then we're now starting to understand very recently over the last few days the full horror of the public lands sell-off that is underway there. And 2 to 3 million acres of public lands has to be sold within 5 years now, but 250 million acres are available for sale. No public consultation at all. Indeed, there is no requirement even to notify publicly that public land has been privatized. So the first you might know of a public river that has been sold as part of the sell-off is you arrive and find a trespassers will be prosecuted / shot line. So the systemic assault on public lands, which Doug Burgum, Secretary of State for the Interior, in his Senate confirmation hearing, which I sat through all 5 hours of, almost all of them, nodded off a bit towards the end, he described America's public lands there as America's balance sheet. And that declaration is now being realized in rollback, deregulation, and sell-off. So not only rivers are under threat there, but they are central to that.
I wonder if people in Canada might also be concerned, given and I know this isn't something that you could necessarily talk to, but the momentum toward building more energy projects and more mining projects because of the fight with Trump and trying to establish our own sovereignty would seem to be in a conflict with this whole idea of rights of nature. And you just wonder, where's the fight back? Even in the last election, climate change wasn't even an issue, much less that. So where does the fight back come from? Is it people like Rita, or is it?
Yes, it is. And I mean, I can't speak to your country, but I can speak to mine. And something amazing has happened in my country in the 5 years I've been writing this book. And actually this pen, which is, I always feel bound to say, is not a vape, because when I first held it up, someone's like, give it a puff. No, the pen itself is not remarkable. It's a lovely fountain pen, but the ink inside it, blue ink, has the water of 106 rivers and streams and lakes and seas from around the United Kingdom. Actually, one of them is from Missoula, Montana, because somebody gave me some water on the road and I mixed it into the ink. And they were gathered because we had the biggest clean water protest in the UK's history last November. And so many people, tens of thousands of people, came from all around the islands, and they all brought bottles of water from their rivers, streams, and seas and lakes. And those were then all woven in a great vessel right outside Westminster. And a little bit of that water was then taken and used to mix a bottle of ink that was then given to me the day this book came out. I tell that story partly because it means I can sign your book with 106 rivers, but mostly because it is about this remarkable guardianship movement and this upwelling of citizen science, of people taking up the slack that government has left. So we've got a drastically defanged Environment Agency, strategically underfunded by 12 years of Conservative government because they don't want environmental oversight. And we have toothless regulators and watchdog boards filled with revolving door watering company executives. So in the face of this, instead of sitting back, this amazing organized resistance has emerged. And it's already happening. Check back with me in 5 years and our rivers will be in a much better place. So that ink is the ink of hope and hope as a discipline.
Yeah. And I should, in fairness, say that First Nations in this country are guardians and have been taking back responsibility, their own ways of doing things, much to the benefit of so many parts of the environment and riverways and ocean fronts in this country as well. So,
yeah, no doubt.
I cannot believe we're almost running out of time, and there is so much more to talk about.
Wait, we've only just got going, haven't we? It's like
No.
20 to 9. Oh my God, it's 20 to 9. Okay.
But there is a moment when you get to the gorge of the river, and I'm not sure you have the time to read this, but do you want to hear this? Right, page 271. You're about to hit some. We'll go that first, where you're about to hit some big rapids. And at first, you and Wayne decide you're going to portage it because you're sensible.
We're very unsensible, but it's one sentence. It's quite a long sentence.
It really is. It's like you just emptied it out.
It's not quite the, as it were, metaphysical. A bunch of things happen at the very end of the book that I still can't quite make any sense of, but that I write about. But this is just us running a rapid, a very, very big rapid. Anyway, then we slip into the water and flow on, and within seconds, the first wide green slope has me, and I glide over and down it and hit the 6-foot-high face of the first standing wave, and the tip of my boat plunges deep into it and then lifts up, shuddering out of water thick as cream, and I begin to rise up the face of the wave. But then it picks me up as though I were driftwood and tilts me upwards at 45 degrees and spins me through 180 degrees. So in an instant I realize through a blur of fear, facing upstream against time's flow and downwards into the hole at the wave's base, into which I am surely now to be plunged. But then I cannot understand what is occurring because effect has not followed cause. A second passes, then two, then a third, and I'm still there, suspended in that same absurd, astonishing position, canted on the tilted crest of a wave which is reforming itself continuously around me, facing up time and down world, and I see that by some prestidigitation of river physics, I am being held there, unintentionally surfing this monstrous wave backwards, being juggled by this wave, and all around me from shore to shore are more standing waves, but then suddenly, river has had enough of its game, and I feel the slide and lift of the back of my boat up and over the vertical, and I'm staring straight down into the hole at the wave's foot, and then I'm airborne and slammed into the hole, head first and upside down. I am exploded out of the boat on impact, as if hurled from an ejector seat down into the white hole, and river is punching fingers up my nostrils, and river is ramming fists into my mouth and down my throat, and I'm deep down, but the right way up, so I grab handfuls of water and haul for the surface on them as if they're holds on a cliff or rungs on a ladder, but they dissolve under each grasp, and I'm kicking out and feel my feet bang against the rocks on the riverbed, and one of them catches briefly. Did the loop come free? If I snag now, I'm done, cooked, end of. And then one of my shins smashes on a sharp rock edge. What the hell is down there? But then I'm free, and the flotation device has done its job and bobbed me up like a cork, and 3 rules. Say them back to me. Yes, boss. 1, don't panic. 2, get clear. 3, feet up and downstream. Everything is chaos. 4 of the 5 boats are belly up. Where's Danny? Where's Ilya? What the fuck could have knocked both the boss and the bear over? And only the salmon is still upright, and he is pounding upstream towards me, yelling at me to swim to a side eddy, and I strike out and somehow traverse the current that's rushing me downstream. And there are rocks under my hands, under my elbows, under my knees, and I haul myself out onto them and lie there face down, gulping like a landed fish, and then I roll over onto my back and shout laugh at the sky, which is now flooded with a late-day stormlight, and that night the moon is full and huge and made of egg yolk and bright enough to read by.
That's a hell of a way to do research for a book.
Yeah, full body research.
And I don't want you to have to give away what is a remarkable experience at the Gorge, but I will just ask you to answer whether you got your question and answer.
Yes, the question was answered, not in language as I understood it, but it was resoundingly answered. And I do my best to give some account of that without allowing it what Edouard Glissant calls the right to opacity.
And you invented a new verb, which I liked. You were rivered.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if this whole book can be summarized in one aim, it's to turn river from a noun into a verb. And it's just so weird to me that we're back with language again. The river is almost exclusively a noun, but what could be more of a verb than a river? In America, they say river. I just don't get it.
That's a new one. All right. Well, I'm going to let go of my selfish questions and turn to some of yours.
Brilliant questions.
And the Slido here. This first one is from Laurel, but there are 4 others who want this question asked. Has your poetry writing in The Lost Words and The Lost Spells influenced your writing in Is a River Alive? And if so, how?
Oh, thanks, folks.
And thank you.
Oh, right. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if there's a way to say this, which is not, I don't know. I'll just say it. I think this is the book I've been learning to write all these years. That's not to say it's a good book. It's just the one I've been learning to write. And it kind of cycles back to Barry. I've been writing poetry and films and libretti and songs, particularly songs. And I've learned from each of those forms something new about how language can work and how rhythm and sound and beats and story, all of them, each of them has taught me something new. And I have tried to bring all of those learnings together in this book.
This book features intently studied portraits of humans.
Yes.
Where do you see these intersecting with the question of whether a river is alive? There's that lovely liminal space you come across more than once.
It's not an intersection, it's a continuity. Mm. Rivers run through people as surely as they run through places, and the pattern, books always surprise one with their patterns that you only perceive once you've crossed the terrain of writing them in their majority, and then you look back and you realize that moments or incidents in the landscape that you've traversed, which seem to stand in no relation to one another, suddenly spring into mycelial affinity. And that happened with death in this book. Mm. It is a book filled with death, and the three of the main characters in it all suffer loss, and all are at some level brought back out of the shadow by river, by water. So I suppose that is the truest and both the truest and simplest answer to the question: is a river alive? Yes, because they enliven us. They make our life possible, and they also make porous to love the boundary between life and death. And that's something I've thought a lot about this last few months in particular.
And again, you've experienced a degree of porousness yourself without getting too far into it.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, a continuity, not an intersection, but a lovely question. Thank you.
Why is the title of your new book a question and not a statement?
No, well, if it was a statement, I'd be a dogmatist. I'd be a politician. It's a question because questions inquire of us, and they lead to quests. And this is an exploration, not a declaration. And really the question mark remains, but it is a question that opens so much, and that there's so much at stake in how we answer that question now, of all times. And the we there is, again, a culturally specific we, and in a way is the we of power.
Can I follow up with another river question, which would follow on this idea of how would you construct legislation policy around a river that is alive? What does a river want?
What does a river want?
Say it in a low voice. What does a river want?
Sorry, that's my B-movie version. A river wants to reach the sea. That isn't necessarily true of the Colorado. There's a James Scott reports an extraordinary conversation with a water engineer in the 1970s, who says this is the resource position in its maximal utterance. Every drop of water in the Colorado River that reaches the sea is a drop wasted. A river wants to reach the sea. It does not want a dead pool, which is the hydrologists and the glaciologists' term of art for when a river no longer has enough flow, or the glacier no longer enough flow to move itself out of its own bed. It does not want to be choked with garbage. It does not want to be so toxic that it has 0 species count and 0% dissolved oxygen. There's a whole other conversation about what whales want, but maybe we don't have time for that now.
Can you do it in a... I won't put a clock on you.
Well,
because I think this is interesting,
okay.
And it relates to the rivers.
It does relate to the rivers, because the right to opacity, we're nowhere near speaking river, whatever that would mean, but we are trying to speak whale. And when I say we, there are very well-meaning scientists running a project called Project SETI, who are now using large language model analysis, AI-driven analysis of increasingly voluminous data sets gathered of whale song and whale utterance and whale speech to begin to try to crack the code. Those of you who've seen that extraordinary film Arrival, which is such a premonitory film in so many ways, and I was thinking of, along with a bunch of other SF works while writing this book, that is now happening with whale. But what's happened inevitably is that Silicon Valley money has poured in, because they see so there's now a $20 million bounty effectively on the first group that can crack the speech system of another species, not specifically whale, but it looks plausible that whale a cetacean of some kind will be the recipient of that. I don't think we should be allowed to speak whale. I don't think we should be able to contaminate semiotic systems that have evolved independently of us across hundreds of thousands of years. And we certainly don't need to be able to do it to know what whales want. They want not to be harpooned, and they want oceans healthy enough that they can reproduce in, and they want oceans quiet enough that they can speak to one another in. And we don't need to speak whale to know what whales want. And at some level, we don't need to speak river to know what rivers want.
True.
You have been listening to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers' Fest. To hear more events like this one and view our upcoming events, visit our website at writersfest.bc.ca.